Thank you. All right. Well, I'd like to start off by thanking Columbus Web Group for this opportunity, and thanking Kevin, Sean, Brian, and Laura for all their help along the way. It was took me some time to figure this out. This is my first presentation, but they did a great job mentoring me along the way. So yeah, and I'll be talking about pursuing passion, learning something new, breaking things, and overcoming challenges. And in case I didn't mention it, I'm Seth Moeckel, if you haven't already guessed that. So just a little bit about me. I just started as an engineering intern at Crosschecks. So I work on APIs and backend stuff. I just graduated high school in December. I'll be 18 pretty soon. So finished all this stuff up now. I'm into, just to name a few things, mysteries, coding in Google Go. It's a programming language if anyone doesn't know. Asian food, overly customized operating systems, and art, music, etc. If you guys want to get in touch with me, you can follow me on Twitter or GitHub, and my handle is Are You Curious Yet? So just a little bit more about Crosschecks. This is kind of our slogan, and it's a better way to connect to your health. And so the Crosschecks platform is kind of taking, there we go. So our platform is really about protecting client data, patient data, and we're building a platform to resolve medical identities. And so through that, we also have we give our clients the ability to send appointment reminders, register our clients ahead of time. So filling out forms before our client even steps in the door, going paperless and different things like that. Some of our clients are local hospitals, medical practices, and care providers. And if you'd like to get in touch with anyone at Crosschecks, you can either use our Twitter handle or go to our website here. So this presentation is a little bit kind of my story, talking how I got into programming, and then we'll be covering some different methodologies I used for self-teaching and pursuing my own hobbies, and then how to implement that in your life. And at the end, we'll have a little time for Q&A. So one thing I wanted to mention about this presentation, this is my first presentation, so it might be a little bumpy. I can promise cheesy GIFs, and I got some images and stuff in here. I also will mention code a lot in this, and that's just because everything I've learned up until this point was kind of centered around computer science and technology. But when you're applying these things to your own life, code is really just a placeholder. You can swap this out for art or cooking or whatever you're into. And so my goal for this presentation is really two things. One, I want you to walk away inspired and with a plan of action. I'm hoping that my story will help you feel that you can then go take this home and pursue your own passions. All right, so I'll start off with talking how I got started coding. So this is kind of my origin story, I guess you could say. And so this is kind of a statement about me. I've always been into art and design. I used to want to be an architect when I was younger. And for me, code is really kind of a medium. So this statement kind of encompasses how I feel about code. And so it's not about the code I create, but what I create with the code. And so this is kind of for me. This is kind of talking about the reason of why I code. And for me, that is code kind of gives me the ability and the opportunity to create something from nothing. So you're kind of working out of a vacuum in a way, I think. And I think it's just really cool that you have this ability to go through and create your own, I guess you could say, world in a way. So it all started, I was probably summer of, I'd say probably 7th grade, so I was 12, and I was watching the Spider-Man movie, and you guys really can't see this that well, but so in the movie, Andrew Garfield has this little remote control deadbolt. And a little 12-year-old me, I mean, this is probably the geekiest thing ever, but little 12-year-old me thought that this deadbolt was super fascinating. I thought this was a really cool gadget, and it kind of inspired me to start to question, how could I build one of these? And so from that moment, I began to start Googling things and started to question, how could I don't really know how to build circuit boards, or I don't know how to program, and so how could I make that a reality for me? And so my version was, I kind of got ahead of myself, and I wanted to make it something I could text, rather than having like a RC controller and just send a text message and it would unlock my door or lock my door or something like that. But the problem is I didn't know how. And so, like I said, from there I started Googling things. I ran into the Arduino, which if any of you don't know what that is, the Arduino is a small microcontroller kind of targeted at education and people new to electronics. And so I started learning how to wire things up, how to build circuits, started getting into some really basic programming. Ended up trying a lot of things, and it was kind of a mess, but it was fun. From there, I got into the Raspberry Pi, which is another educational piece of hardware, I guess you could say. And if you haven't checked it out, I definitely recommend it. It's very popular in the UK and coming over this way now. So from there, and kind of as a result of finding out about the Raspberry Pi, I started learning the Python programming language, and started following tutorials on Code Academy and using YouTube and stuff like that to kind of figure out how coding works, and how computer programming works. And this kind of became my launch pad into the processing programming language and generative design and art, and then Java, and kind of just from there, it just kind of took off and got into everything. And so this is kind of a little bit of a backstory here. I have a kind of an unusual background, I guess you could say, when it comes to education. I had about half my time was at public school, and the other half was I was homeschooled. And this was cool because it gave me the chance to experience the best of both worlds. I got the social experience, kind of learned study habits from school, but I also got the chance to pursue things on my own and really had the freedom to choose what I wanted to learn. And so this all kind of, when I started programming, this was all around the summer before 7th grade. I was just getting into public school, and I joined the robotics team at my school. And so that was really, really great. We had a lot of fun there. We were part of, I think it was called First Robotics. So we did state competitions and stuff like that. I think we were building Frisbee bots or something like that. So it was a really great opportunity, but we found that I found that it was really hard to be a part of the crew, to really come in there and actually start to build something and feel like you're a significant part of the team. And so, really, like I said, I never really got the chance to learn and grow. We were often put on jobs like, go paint this or go file this, or putting things together, but mostly handyman jobs. And we never really got the opportunity to be mentored into programming or to try something new, which I found kind of disappointing and kind of left me wanting something more. And so from there, when I later went back to homeschooling, and then I ended up homeschooling all the way until graduation, I decided to start my own robotics club for other programmers and other homeschoolers who are interested in technology like me. And so we started with sumo bots. I don't know if any of you have ever heard of sumo bots, but they're basically like, you could think of sumo wrestlers but on wheels. And we had a lot of fun with that. And then from there, we got into Arduino, and I kind of, it gave me the chance to start to learn how to pursue, being a leader in a group and organizing, and the teaching. We had a lot of younger students there, so it kind of presented me with challenges such as, teaching kids of varying age groups. So I had, 12 all the way up to like 15 and 16, so right around the time I was about the same age, and it was a really great opportunity. Had a lot of fun, and I definitely like to go back to it at some point. So another project I've been working on, or I worked on, and this was kind of born right around the same time I was doing robotics, or about halfway through, was called Spectrum. And so this project was kind of inspired by my early years as kind of a clueless coder, and I wanted to build websites, I wanted to build mobile apps, but I really didn't have a clue what I was doing at that point. And so I began to I started looking at different alternatives. So, WordPress, which is kind of a popular name. I'm sure many of you know of WordPress. And then there's some other ones out there. And I found that many of those solutions didn't provide me either the design capabilities that I wanted or the experience for the user. And so this kind of led to Spectrum. And Spectrum is a no-code platform for creating apps and creating websites and stuff like that. And it was kind of taking along this idea that the only thing required to create an app or to create a website would be the desire. Because I was really fascinated by this idea of, what kind of world would we live in if the only thing required to create something amazing was just the desire, and no longer we're limited by skills or technical barriers. And this was also a Kickstarter I ran. Learned a lot along the way. It didn't succeed in the end, but I learned a lot of business skills. I learned a lot of organizing skills, and I had the chance to attempt marketing, and customer interactions and things like that. And then the final piece of some of my personal projects are what I call passion projects, and these are things I've been doing for quite a while, and I continue to do now. Most of these are kind of born around an interest in learning something new or kind of diving into a new idea. And so I'd be working on something and I'd come up with an idea and I'd be like, this is actually a really, really cool project, and start to pursue it. And so some of these, this is really where the bulk of my learning happened, was experimenting with things and trying new project ideas. Let's see. Sorry, I have to check my notes here, guys. So some of the current projects I'm working on, and these are a little bit technical, so I apologize in advance. So the first one is, I call it Geometry, and it's a multi-model database engine. And so basically, if you don't know what a database engine is, it's essentially a tool for storing and retrieving data very quickly and efficiently. And then the second project I'm kind of working on right now, I have a whole lot I'm juggling, but I thought I'd keep it simple for you guys, is called map.io, and it's a routing library for the Google Go programming language. All right, so I thought I'd start off the main content of this presentation with defining what passion is. And so there's a couple definitions I have here. The first being a strong feeling of enthusiasm or excitement for something or about doing something. And the second is a strong liking or desire for or devotion to some activity, object, or concept. So one important thing to note about passion is there really is no expert in passion. It's really up to you to define what passion is for you. But in my case, it was really simply just doing what I enjoy, pursuing what I enjoy. Now, regardless of your lifestyle and what your interests are and what your hobbies are and such, I think we can all agree that passion is important. In many cases, it leads our choices, whether they're good or bad. And passion is responsible for many of the great inventions and the experiences of our lives. Another important thing I think about passion is it often provides a target or a goal, or I guess you could say a purpose. And I think that in many points in our lives, we all look for or need purpose. Now, this is just kind of a quote. I don't really have anything to explain about this, but I think it stands really well on its own. And Steve Jobs once said, "Your work is going to fill a large part of your life, and the only way to be truly satisfied is to do what you believe is great work. And the only way to do and the only way to do great work is to love what you do." And this part is really, this is like my favorite part. If you haven't found it yet, keep looking. Don't settle. As with all matters of the heart, you'll know when you find it. So this is a video we set up for this presentation. For this meetup, we asked the CBus tech community to talk what they were passionate about. And so we received over 30 responses, which I think is pretty awesome. And there might be a few of you who are actually in the video here today, which I think is even better. So I'll just go ahead and play the video. No. Need the audio on, Kevin? Okay, cool.
Hi, my name is Jeff, and I'm passionate about collaboration because businesses are better when people work together.
Are you recording?
Hi, my name is Jessica Fleming, and I'm passionate about starting a biohacker lab space here in Columbus because this will promote a community of scientific and critical thinking.
Hi, I'm Christopher Fahey, and I am passionate about cloud computing because the sky is the limit.
Hey, I'm Alex Bell, and I'm passionate about writing because it's an incredibly powerful tool for creativity and expression, and there's no debugging.
Hey, this is Joey Hendrickson, and I'm passionate about music because it's something in this world that truly brings people together.
Hey, I'm Sean O'Neill, and I'm passionate about JavaScript because it powers the web.
Hey, my name is Calvin Cooper, and I am passionate about helping entrepreneurs build great companies because, as we all know, entrepreneurship is the engine that drives prosperity in this country. And it's important that not just entrepreneurs in San Francisco, Boston, and New York, but entrepreneurs right here in Columbus, Ohio, up in Canton, in Cincinnati, in Detroit. It's imperative that entrepreneurs from all backgrounds and in every region have access to the capital, resources, and guidance that they need to build the companies of tomorrow.
Hey, I'm Heidi, and I'm passionate about making time for travel because you get to meet great new people and experience new things like this beautiful view in Sedona, Arizona.
Hi, I'm Andrew Dodson, and I'm passionate about creating more opportunity for more people because I believe that each of us succeeds when all of us succeed.
Hi, I'm Arslan from Mentoring Developers. I'm passionate about mentorship, of course, and also diversity that's achieved through empathy. Because I believe empathy and, as a consequence, diversity will be the engine of growth for the 21st century in technology. We need to be inclusive, we need to be diverse, and we need to be welcoming. And we're getting there.
Hey, my name is Drew Lehman. I'm passionate about levers. Levers allow you to lift extremely heavy things with only a little bit of force. And as we know, it's about the outcomes, not the inputs. That's what's important.
Hi, my name is Lauren Kinsey, and I'm passionate about cybersecurity because trust is the glue that holds our society together. Trust makes commerce possible, it makes our economy thrive, it makes government of the people, by the people, for the people possible, and cybersecurity is what holds that trust together in our interconnected world.
Hi, I'm Alex Frohmeyer, and I'm passionate about art because the end of creativity is the artist.
Hey gang, my name is Jay Klaus. I'm passionate about connecting people and building community because doing cool stuff with cool people is what makes life the best.
Hi, I'm Brady, and I'm passionate about all types of development, and I like to learn as much as I can.
Hey, my name's Mary Lynn, and I'm passionate about music because it is the coolest possible way to communicate.
Hi guys, my name is Greg Cunnyworth, and I'm the creative director and co-founder at Makeway. In addition to being passionate about the company I started, I'm also really passionate about design and identity design. It's what I went to school for, and I love when I can recreate a logo and then implement that into a whole new web design.
My name is Blake Compton, and I'm passionate about building communities. Why? Because communities are the foundation for successful living, love, and happiness.
Hi, my name is Brian Vogel, and I'm passionate about animation because it rules.
Hi, my name is Ray, and I'm passionate about music technology because it has the potential to completely change the way that we express ourselves and communicate stories and emotions to other people.
All right. I really like the levers one there. That's pretty good. I would really like to thank anyone who was part of that. Really appreciate your input. And I'll go ahead and move on to the next section here, or I guess this is part of the same section. So one really important thing that I noticed along the way through my own pursuits is pursuing passion as a journey. There's going to be ups and downs along the way. It's going to be hard at times, but if you stick with it and you push past all these challenges and these roadblocks, it can be really rewarding. And there are often, many times I felt like this. So this is kind of funny, I throw it in here. And then one other thing I want to note, and this is kind of just a joke, but just because you can doesn't mean you should. So when I first started out with Arduino and stuff like that, I don't know what I was trying to build, but at some point I ended up wiring all these things together, an Ethernet cable and a USB cable and like a USB hub or something like that, and I powered it up and fried the whole thing. So I'm not exactly sure what I was doing there, but I think it's probably important to consider what you're doing ahead of time a little bit. So, all right, so this is kind of talking more about, this is kind of a mindset I used when I was pursuing things, and I call this the hacker mentality. So usually when you think of a hacker, and you may think of something like this. I'm not sure I think it's dancing over here, but, or maybe like this, I don't know. But today we're talking about a different kind of hacker. And so here's my definition. A hacker is someone who's not afraid to hack something up to discover how it works. And so this kind of, another way to put it is, the hacker the hacker lets his curiosity take over, regardless of risk or possibility of failure, and just goes and I guess you could say just dives in. And so the first part of this is audacity. And so audacity is kind of, in my own words, is that willingness or that boldness to just push past the risks and the barriers and just go for it. It's kind of, I guess you could say, fearlessness. Let's see. And so this is just like, I'm kind of saying the same thing again here. This is willing to take a risk, willing to break something, to fail. And for me, I often found that my audacity was a byproduct of my curiosity in something. So I was really interested in figuring out how something worked, or how I could build something. And my curiosity kind of helped me push past and be audacious about this project or about this idea. And so there's the second part. And so curiosity is really that deep interest in how something works, or the strong desire to know, to understand. And I often think that audacity coupled with curiosity lead to discovery. And so that's the third part. So discovery is not really anything I have to explain, but I think one really cool thing to think about is many of these celebrities and the well-known people of our society, the people we look up to, in one way or another are hackers. You could talk about people like Steve Jobs, Elon Musk, various entrepreneurs who have pushed past their fears and let curiosity take over, let an idea take over, and made amazing discoveries that have then impacted all of us. And one thing I also noticed about my own discoveries is most of these were accidental. I wasn't intending on figuring out some revolutionary way of doing something in my own life, or some experience, but I ended up maybe messing something up and realizing that there was this great idea here all along. All right, so and this is kind of another point, kind of tied to discovery, in my opinion, is knowing the question is just as important as knowing the answer. So whenever you're pursuing something, knowing what you're trying to figure out or knowing what you're trying to ask when you're facing a problem is just as important as knowing the answer to that question. And sometimes questions are really hard to express. I've often found myself having trouble figuring out how I could actually begin to research something or begin to challenge something. And so some of the things I've done to get past those are things like saying my problems out loud, talking aloud to inanimate objects, as weird as that may sound. Sometimes you might get some funny looks around the office, but talking aloud to something often, having that chance to listen to yourself talk through a problem, often, for me at least, unlocks the answer. And so, yeah, like I said, people may think you're crazy. I've had that happen before once. Another thing that another good way to work through a problem is often to rephrase it. So kind of like you're writing a paper, begin to write that out and see if you can figure out another way to phrase your question. And then sometimes a roadblock is a roadblock. You can't get past it. And for me, this was always a sign that it's time to get creative. It's time to bend the rules. It's time to go outside of the box and find another way to solve my problem. All right, so this section is kind of talking about when I began to self-teach and some of the life lessons that came along with that. And so the first is self-teaching. Most of the time when I was learning, I am a self-taught developer. I don't know if I mentioned that or not yet. And most of what I've learned up until this point has been based around projects. So like I've mentioned before, I would be inspired by some sort of idea, and I'd begin to pursue that and begin to research how to do things, questioning how can I build a circuit board, or how can I program this, and it kind of led into a project. And many times I would, fail. Many times I would, I would mess up something. I wouldn't understand what I'm doing. But one really important thing whenever you're teaching yourself is to be willing to try and fail and try again. To just keep going. And then another thing I always thought, and this is kind of a personal thing for me, is there's a lot of different ways to teach out there. There's a lot of different ways to learn. But I always found that I had to experiment first before I could ever figure out how I could teach myself something well. So don't be afraid to try something really odd, because I think that it's more important that you find a good way to teach yourself than it is to find a methodology that may seem popular, that may seem the right way to do something. And then another really cool thing here is Google is your best friend. So as an early developer, I kind of felt I was kind of uneasy about using Google a lot. I felt like this isn't something a competent developer would do. But the truth is, we all are lacking answers to many things. And having a tool like Google right there, right there to access is great. It's a really great opportunity, really great tool to use. So don't be afraid to use Google. So this kind of goes into my next section, mistakes and life lessons. So at times I found that the best life lessons, the best learning experiences came from when I was making a mistake. I'd mess up something really bad, and I'd be really mad about it, I'd be really frustrated, and then I realized that now I know what I was doing wrong. Now I know how I can go back and when I repeat this, not do the same problem, or not cause the same issue. So you can't be afraid to mess up, because it happens to everyone, and it's just part of the process. And I think the most important thing with that is really acknowledging that you're going to make mistakes and being able to accept that. All right, and so this is a quote by Danish physicist Niels Bohr, and I really like this. An expert is someone who has made all the mistakes which can be made. So this is kind of just backing up my original statement here, but I'm kind of talking about the idea that, like I said, no one knows all the answers, and it's going to take a lot of time. It's going to take a lot of trials, but in the end, I think it'll be rewarding. And so this is kind of talking. This section is kind of talking about my experiences when I was working on my own versus working with a group. So often the easiest way to work on anything, whether you're into art or you're into design or you're a developer, is to work on something alone, kind of pursue things on your own. But it's not always the best way to do things, because there's only so many ways you can expose yourself to new techniques, and there's only so many things you can expose yourself to. And when you're working on your own, many times you'll find yourself kind of locked in your own bubble, locked into your own processes, your own choices and experiences. And working with others will encourage you to break bad habits and kind of force you to work in a way that all your teammates agree on. And then another thing with this is a big part of any hobby is sharing it. So whenever you guys are, and I'm sure you guys can probably agree with this one, is whenever someone's talking about something and they're really passionate about what they're talking about, this could be something really maybe mundane, but if they're talking about it with passion, I'm interested, And so I think the best part of any hobby is the opportunity to share it with someone else who's just passionate about it as you are. All right, and this is the final section here today. This is kind of talking about how to pursue what I've done, or how to apply what I've done in your own life. And so these are the guidelines I used, and most of these are pretty simple, but these are kind of the things that I had to kind of think about and kind of sift through to figure out exactly what I've done in the past over the last almost 6 years now. And so the first of that is just pick something. There's no wrong choice when you're pursuing a passion. There's no wrong answer, essentially. Even if you don't like it from the get-go, everything is an experience. Everything is something you can learn from, something you can share with others. You won't always find your passion on the first try. For me, it was first I started pursuing design and architecture, and then photography, and eventually I landed on development and decided that I wanted to do that professionally. But that took quite a bit of time. And so it may take, like I said, it may take a few times to figure things out. But the important thing is that you're trying, because if you're not going to try anything, you're guaranteeing that there's no result. So you have to try in order to get a new result. The second point here is to be fearless. Don't be afraid to ask questions. Don't be afraid to asking questions many times. I feel like if I'm asking too many questions, or I'm asking something that I feel like I should know, that I'm going to look stupid or that I'm going to look incompetent. But being able to admit that you don't know everything, and being able to admit that you're teachable, and being able to be teachable is really important. To realize that you don't have all the answers. Oh, that's the animation we made. Didn't know that was there. So the third one here is dream big. So set big goals for yourself. Set goals that may seem really far off, that may seem challenging, but the important thing is that setting goals that you believe you can do. So think big picture. For me, this is something I often have a problem with. Is I'll get into a project and I will try to dig into the details first and start messing around with the very specific things in my project before I even know the overarching idea of what I'm doing. And then, so with dreaming, don't be afraid to set a goal that you don't think you can achieve. because it's all about believing in yourself. You know, I don't know if you guys ever watched, this is probably from the wrong generation, but Arthur as a kid, that's like the whole message of the show. It kind of just like popped into my head there. And so this is kind of backing this up. Henry Ford once said that whether you think you can or you think you can't, you're right. And so like this is that idea of, you know, really, if you believe that you can do something, you can. And so I kind of thought I should give you guys an example. And this is my dream. I've always been someone who's had a lot of hobbies and had a lot of different interests. Always had trouble picking favorites. And I really like pursuing code in different areas where I have another hobby or another passion. So art or photography or you know, data visualization and you know, natural science and stuff like that. And I would really like to someday be able to create a company where I can then pursue all my passions or all my different interests and be able to use it to help others or help change the world and make an impact. And I'd also really like to maybe get the chance to travel and see the world a little bit. And so we're coming down to the last few points here. This is a really important one for me. Find someone to share your passion with. So there's this kind of another, I guess you could say a repeat, but a really important part of any pursuit is you know, finding someone to share that with, because if you're hitting roadblocks and you're facing challenges and you find yourself getting frustrated and getting discouraged, you know, having someone else to share that with, someone who's either been there before or understands your trouble and can help you through that, is invaluable. And oftentimes I found that sharing something and having that excitement with someone else often helped me go farther, and it was kind of a fuel. So kind of, you know, fuel the fire. And so my next point is find mentors. You know, this doesn't have to be anything real complicated. Oftentimes I found myself being mentored by various people online, but just finding people who are passionate about what you're doing and who have been there before and who can help you find the way. And so this is kind of, like I said, being able to admit that you can't always figure everything out on your own, and you know, being willing to accept that you don't know everything, and being able to admit when you need help. And I guess I was supposed to plug on the Columbus Web Group mentoring stuff here. But if you guys need a mentor, reach out to Kevin or Sean or one of them, and they'll hook you up. So they've definitely been great mentors for me. And so the next slide is be a mentor. So, and this doesn't mean that you have to be an expert at anything. I often found myself, you know, when I first was teaching robotics, I was by no means an expert at programming or computer science in any way. But I was in a position where I was interested in helping someone else, and I knew somewhat more than they did. And we definitely learned from each other, but it was a great opportunity to, sorry guys, I'm a little crazy minded here. It was a really great opportunity to kind of reevaluate what I knew and kind of solidify what I knew in my own processes, and you know, help someone else. You know, it kind of reminds you when you're getting the chance to help someone else through their problems. I found that it reminded me of times where I was facing troubles, or back when I was at that point in time. So when you're helping someone else, this doesn't have to be anything crazy. This can be as simple as, you know, answering questions for someone who's just beginning programming or just beginning art or whatever. So I'd like to challenge all of you guys when you find the opportunity to be a mentor to someone else, because I think that if we all are open to helping each other and we're not afraid to speak out and not afraid to take that chance, I think we can really make a big impact. All right, so now we're at the end of my presentation. I hope you guys really enjoyed it. I know I did talking to you guys. And so now we have a little time allotted for Q&A. I think someone will be running around, probably Brian with a microphone. So if you guys have any questions, stories you'd like to share, anything you'd like to mention, just go ahead and raise your hand, and they'll give a mic to you.
I'm curious about, how do you know the difference between this is something I'm passionate about and I'm just having trouble figuring out this challenge right now, or this is something that I'm actually not passionate about? So how did you How did you know architecture and design wasn't for you? And then
Yeah.
even despite all the challenges that software development was.
Yeah. So many times when I first got into like architecture and design and stuff like that, I found that I really was interested in the idea of design, or like the idea of architecture, and I enjoyed drawing, but I didn't really enjoy the processes behind it. And so I started to get into things, and I would pursue things, and I'd run into roadblocks, and I'd find it hard to find a reason to keep going or find a reason to move through this problem. And so I think that when you're passionate about something, it's simple. You know, you don't have to convince yourself. You don't have to try to explain to yourself why you should keep pursuing it, because the reason's already there. So I hope that answers your question. Okay. All right. Anyone else? All right. Well, if you guys, oh, right there.
So I'm really curious about your dual education. You had like the public school experience and the homeschool experience. So I've got two girls, and I've always wondered, like, you know, you've got to have some balance of like the social experience, but also how integral was it for you to have that homeschool experience where you really got to have the freedom that allows?
Yeah.
And how integral was that to, like, you know, your trajectory of where you're heading now? Because it seems like you're on like an incredible path. There's not very many 17-year-olds who present at Columbus Web Group and do these sort of things. So, yeah.
If I'm getting that correctly, for me, I think that, and this is really kind of a personal thing, so it really depends on the student. But I've always been really interested in pursuing things on my own. I've always been like an avid reader, always had lots of hobbies, and I'm very independent. So if that's who that your children are, then I definitely recommend homeschooling is a really great opportunity to be able to choose what you're learning and be able to kind of take things at a whim and just try whatever you'd like to. So you have a lot of freedom with that. So I mean, I guess it could be good and bad, but I think it was really integral for me because it gave me the chance to, outside of my core curriculum, gave me the chance to experiment with a lot of computer science concepts and also pursue things like Robotics Club, which took quite a bit of my time, but it was a really great opportunity to figure out how to organize a group or how to lead this group of people and how to teach kids at varying age levels and stuff like that. So that's stuff that you wouldn't get in school. And so then the other aspect of that is the social experience. And I really think that comes down to if you're willing to go out into the world, if you're involved in sports, you're involved in things like Columbus Web Group. Granted, you're talking about kids here, but just finding avenues for your children to meet other people, and yeah, I guess that covers everything. Did that answer your question there? All right. So we have right there.
So what can parents do? I have two girls, and what can parents do to push their kids to be more, because that'd be so awesome if they were like 17 and presenting,
Yeah.
How did your parents react to things, short-circuiting and you trying to ask all these questions, and I don't even know if they're developers or anything, so any tips?
Yeah, so definitely. To answer your question there, this is a little ironic, I guess, but my dad's actually a German teacher at New Albany. And my mom is a stay-at-home mom. She used to be an esthetician. So neither of them are technically minded at all. And when it came down to me pursuing something, the best thing that they always did for me was just to be supportive. Even if they didn't understand what I was talking about, they would always be happy for me, be excited for me, and really help try to push me through my passions. Whenever I'd have a problem and I'd go talk to them about it, they'd always try to be open-minded, always trying to listen and stuff like that. I think does that cover all your question? Sorry, I'm a little crazy day, I guess you could say. So, all right. Anyone else? Back there.
So I have a question for you, because I have a son who's seems similar to you in many ways. He loves to learn on his own. He's very bright. Doesn't really enjoy the school aspect of learning so much, but he loves to learn on his own. And because I've told him, I'm like, well, you really don't need to go to college if you don't want to, but you need to find your way, get yourself in a door somewhere. So I was just curious how you managed to get your internship without going through college.
So for me, I was actually at Startup Week in November, and I ended up meeting up with Jay Klaus. I don't know if any of you guys know him, I think he's some sort of organizer for Startup Weekend. And we ended up talking about stuff, and I mentioned that I was looking for a job or something like that, and he actually reached out to me. So it's kind of a rare opportunity, but I often found, and this is kind of specific to development, but I pursued development a lot outside of any professional or educational avenue. And so I have like a lot of side projects and a lot of pursuits that I can show to people. So I think it's always really important to be able to show companies achievements and be able to show them that you're pursuing things on your own, that you're passionate about what you're doing, and that you're involved in the community. That's something that I found that was really important. So it's all, I think for me, it was really about making connections. So if he can find people who are in the field that he's interested in, and to kind of make friends and make connections there, I think that'd be invaluable to him.
When you said that you looked up a lot of your schooling and coding and robotics on Google, what were the best resources you found for those coding sites and robotics and stuff? Okay, that was actually something I had earlier, but I had to leave it out. I didn't get to finish. So some of the sites I used, Code Academy was one of the first ones I used. There's a lot of books out online, a lot of, I guess you could call them Git books, which are basically online free content you can read. One of the biggest things I started with was actually called processing. So if any of you are interested in programming, I'd definitely check out processing.org. Processing is a language designed for designers, actually, and it's very targeted at visual programming and art and things like that. And so it really gave me a great opportunity to learn the basics of programming without having to get into anything real technical. And it was really rewarding because I would be building something and it's visual, so I get an instant gratification, which really helped to keep me going and stuff like that. So it's by no means is it anything like practical for professional development, but it gave me a really great opportunity to learn the basics of programming, the basics of how a computer works and how I can build a program. So does that answer your question?
Hello. What project are you most proud of? And what technology or language or other projects are just in general are you excited about?
When it comes to proud of, I have a few that I'm real happy about, but I haven't really found that project that I'm like really proud about. I haven't been able to show to everyone. Spectrum would probably be the closest to that. As far as current projects, I have probably 10 in the works right now. I'm kind of bouncing between. My most favorite would probably be Geometry, which is based in Go. Somewhere in, I guess maybe in second, I'm actually building an application, and two guys back here, two of my friends, are also kind of involved in this project, but it's a location-based messaging platform. So I can't really explain the full idea, but it's centered around providing a platform for interacting with people in real time, centered, based on where you are. So, creating digital communities, I guess you could say. And so that's I'm kind of starting to work on that in Go, and then front-end languages, so JavaScript, HTML, CSS, Vue.js, and stuff like that. So, is there any other questions with that for you? I don't know if I really answered that. Yeah, I try to.
When I was 17, I was not doing this.
Well, for me, I graduated in December, but I've been pretty much done with school for a few months now. We were kind of just finalizing things and finishing up paperwork with the school. So I've had a lot of free time outside of, I used to work at Chipotle, so I love Chipotle, but I'm kind of glad that's over with. So outside of that, I kind of would go home, and that was kind of my hobby. I had a lot of free time, and where I live, I kind of live in a country area. I don't have a whole lot of people locally, and so whenever I didn't really have the chance to hang out with someone, that's why I would just kind of dive into a project, and it was kind of just my alone time, I guess you could say. So. Yeah. All right. Any other questions, guys? No.
Hey. Oh. Did you ever get your robot door thing to work?
Sorry, what was that?
Kevin?
I think you cut out there.
Hey. All right. Did you ever get the robot door thing to work?
Oh yeah. I built part of it. I actually had it mounted to my closet door, and I can't remember exactly what I had there. I had it wired up to where I could use a button, but it was at that point in time I realized that it's really expensive to pay for a texting service where you could send a text and then actually have that relay to like a program or something like that. And I kind of realized that, yeah, I can't really afford $1,000 a month for for an SMS gateway. So I ended up rigging it up, and I had it there for a couple months. I didn't get a chance to take it down. I think one of my siblings broke it. But yeah, I actually kind of want to go back to it at some point and rebuild it and maybe bring it sometime to show you guys. So. Okay. Daniel, and then I think Scott also had a question. Oh.
Curious, with your age in the field that you're in, what do you see as far as any future trends or that you see maybe coming?
So that's a hard thing to say. I mean, it seems like, and this is pretty obvious one, is everything is going web. So any developer probably could say the same thing. But is that kind of what you mean? You mean from a technology standpoint, or are you talking? The field that you're working on. Okay, so as a developer. Yeah. So, and this is actually a really cool thing with development. I'm starting to see more and more companies kind of removing that requirement for a college degree, or removing very technical requirements, and kind of allowing a more fluid approach to people who have experience, but not necessarily like the average way of getting into that, which is kind of cool. It's they're kind of caring more about what the developers really can do and who they are, as opposed to certifications and technical, on paper way of saying that they know what they know. So does that answer your question? That's hard to say. I'm sorry, I really couldn't answer that in this time. But if you'd like to actually talk to me afterward, I'm sure we'd have a pretty good conversation about that.
So you talked about the highs and lows with your passion, and when it comes to those difficult moments, say you're working on something technical and you're really running into a problem you can't seem to figure out, what exactly is your rubber ducky, per se?
So you actually know the real story, don't you?
Yes.
Yeah, so I actually was introduced to that at work. I think it was on my first week, and this is week 3, so it's fairly recent. For me, it was kind of whatever was laying around. So sometimes it was my computer screen. Sometimes it was, like various like artistic stuff I have in my room. I have like little like figurines and stuff like that laying around that are kind of, decoration, I guess you could say. But yeah. So, all right. Well, I think that's all the time we have for today for questions. But if any of you guys have any questions you'd like to ask me, feel free to find me afterward. And I'm sure we'll get a chance to talk. And so thanks. I hope you guys enjoyed the presentation.